Who do you call to stop the rise of fascism? Check this out. Leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. Applebaum, I don't know if you caught this. If you didn't, it's worth going and looking for the clip. She was on Joe Scarborough's show this morning on MSNBC, Morning Joe. And she is a Pulitzer Prize-winning historian. And she said, and I quote, "What will come next?" She was talking about how what we are witnessing is essentially the rise of fascism. Masha Gerson, I believe is her name, was also on, who has a new book, about authoritarianism. She says, but Applebaum said, what will come next? In a lot of these countries that cease to be democracies, what comes next is the attempt to steal an election. And what I hope all Americans will be focused on over the next several months is, will Trump and the Republican Party collaborate in an attempt to steal this election? Will they try to change the rules? Will they mess around with distance voting? Will they exacerbate the problems caused by the pandemic to prevent people from voting? Do they value democracy in America enough to allow a real election to go through and to allow themselves to lose? She said, I'm doubtful as to whether we can rely on the party leadership. And yeah, so let's check out the party leadership. Casey Hunt stood down in the basement of the White House, or the Congress building, the Capitol building yesterday, with a camera and a microphone, as all these Republican senators were on their way to a Republican luncheon, and they had to walk by her, and she was shouting questions at them and poking a microphone at them. And here's what the Republican senators had to say. Only one, and I'll read her comment first, only one said anything that I found reassuring, and that was Lisa Murkowski of Alaska. She said, what we saw last night, this is the question that Casey was asking was, what do you think about what the president did clearing the park, essentially? Keep in mind, this was yesterday. We're talking about the day before yesterday. Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, the Republican from Alaska, says, what I saw last night was not the America that I know. But Ron Johnson, the Republican senator from Wisconsin, when he was asked about the president's photo op at St. John's, he says, I didn't really see it. Kelly Loeffler, Republican from Georgia, she just kept on walking, didn't say a word. Pat Roberts, the Republican senator from Kansas, I don't have a comment on that. Senator Rick Scott, the Republican from Florida and former CEO of a company that committed the largest Medicare fraud in the history of America, he said, well, we could all do better, when asked if Donald Trump could do better. Senator Mitt Romney, Republican from Utah, was asked, what did you think about this clearing the park? He says, I didn't watch it closely enough to know. Senator Mike Enzi, the Republican from Wyoming, sorry, I'm late for lunch. Senator Marsha Blackburn, the Republican from Tennessee, walked by without saying anything. Senator Dan Sullivan, the Republican from Alaska, walks by with no response. Senator Rob Portman, Republican from Ohio, I'm late for lunch. Senator Tim Scott, the only black senator in the entire Republican caucus, says, I've already said too much. They've got him cowed now. Senator Steve Daines, the Republican from Montana, what did you think about the president clearing the park? I was grateful for the president's leadership. Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, asked if what we saw at the White House last night was an abuse of power. Senator Ted Cruz said, by the protesters, yes. Like the protesters have power? Really? When did protesters start running the country? Bill Cassidy, the senator from Louisiana, Republican senator. I didn't follow it, I'm sorry. Senator Josh Hawley, the Republican from Missouri, the United States senator, says, I've seen conflicting reports about what happened. Senator Richard Shelby, the Republican from Alabama, walks by, no comment. Senator Joni Ernst, the Republican from Iowa, she said, my head hurts. She asked Senator Mitch McConnell, what do you think about Trump's leadership in this moment? He said, I'm not going to critique other people's performances. And Mike Lee, Senator Mike Lee from Utah, Mitt Romney's colleague, he says, violence is scary. Right. Meanwhile, we've got this new thing going on. Uniformed people uniformed, armed people surrounding the White House with no badges, no identification, no indication what branch of the service or of whatever they're from. Apparently these are like riot guards from federal prisons, apparently, but no ID. Now, I don't know if this is a violation of a specific law. I'm guessing if it was, somebody would have called it out by now. And I know that at least one Democratic senator has said that they're going to propose legislation to forbid this. But this is super dangerous. These guys were, according to this report from the Washington Post today, as it turns out, each of these encounters was apparently with elements of the Bureau of Prisons called to the region by Attorney General William Barr. But when you can't identify somebody and they kill the guy next to you, what do? How do you hold them accountable? Who do you call? What do you say? This is what they do in fascist countries.